Hype Man, Raj Nation, the GOAT to market. From Hype HQ in Chicago, Illinois, Startup Hype Man presents the GOAT to Market Show. What's up, everyone? I am your host, Raj Nation, the founder and chief pitch artist of Startup Hype Man. This podcast is where we bring you founders, company leaders, and creatives who are building it, who are doing it, who have been there and done that. And they pull back the curtain on their go-to-market strategies so that you can build a venture that you love and become the GOAT of your industry. Want first listen on episodes before anyone else? Subscribe to our newsletter at startuphypeman.com. You will get alerts every Sunday morning when we release new episodes. All right, let's hear how today's guest is becoming the GOAT.
Ladies and gentlemen, making his way to the microphone from the Greater Toronto Area, he is the founder and chief feeder at SalesFeed Media Network and the chief marketing officer at Technology Advice. Please welcome the one, the only, Tyler Lessard.
Woo! Wow, Raj. I mean, I wish that were my LinkedIn audio name when you click. Oh, wait a minute. It basically is.
Is it? Did we do that for you?
We did, folks. If you're listening right now, Raj Nation, the one and only, actually did a reading of my name in that style of voice. So if you go to my LinkedIn profile, you click the little speaker button beside my name to hear how it's pronounced. You'll get to hear that all day long. Raj saying,
I totally forgot we had that.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Pay him $50 to do it for you. You won't regret it.
You know, the unfortunate thing about doing these style of intros on the podcast is I've realized recently I've had to tone it down a bit because otherwise the microphone peaks and then you actually can't hear most of it. Because they used to be way more big and broad, and now I've had to condense it down into a more sort of microphone friendly version, I guess.
Yeah, it's tough. I get it. Struggles are real, buddy. Struggles are real.
All right. So like I mentioned, everybody, he's Tyler Lessard. He's not only a guest today, he's a good friend of mine. Those of you who have been following along with Startup Hype Man over the years might know that there was about a 2-year stretch where Tyler and I were talking pretty much every week as part of creating content on behalf of the SalesFeed Media Network. At the time, it was owned by Vidyard. It was spun out of Vidyard. And we were doing video content together. We were hosting our own weekly or bi-weekly podcast, which I still think is probably one of the best produced podcasts ever made.
So good.
And we were just having a lot of fun in the process. So Tyler and I have spent a lot of time really on the same side of the microphone, if you will, but this is the first time I get to actually interview Tyler himself. And just to give you a little bit more background on Tyler, he spent a lot of time as a go-to-market executive and a VP of marketing, 10 years at Vidyard. More recently, over the last several months, joining Technology Advice and continuing on with the SalesFeed Media Network, which has at this point amassed 150,000 followers and subscribers, with a really, really, really high amount of weekly engagement. Their top YouTube video has nearly 200,000 views. And actually, by the time this airs, it might be past 200,000 views. They've got 10,000 YouTube subscribers. They are doing a lot in the media space, both with SalesFeed Media Network and then also with Technology Advice, which is itself a media publishing platform. So naturally, with all this experience, I want to talk to Tyler about taxes. No, what I want to talk to Tyler about today is the inner workings of building and scaling a media network or a media brand. So Tyler, once again, welcome to my show, the GTM show, building a media brand. Why is this on your mind? Why is this important to you?
Well, this is something I've been spending a lot of time on really the last 5 years. As a marketing leader, I pay very close attention to not only the trends on the marketing side of the business, like what's going on with marketing technology, how are marketing strategies evolving, but more importantly is how are our audiences evolving? How are they changing? What are their expectations looking like these days? And, I think over the last number of years, we have seen, no surprise here, this continued shift towards number one, people want to self-serve online, learn not only sort of for how to buy, but also as they are exploring different topics, learning more about doing their jobs. They want things out there on the internet. They want to be able to find them easily, or for them to find them in their inboxes. And secondly, it's the world of like we write blogs every week, and that's our content strategy. That is over because, again, people today expect different forms of content. They expect video, they expect audio, they expect other forms of social content. And in some cases, those are preferred over long form written blogs. So I think a lot about how to take an audience first approach to our marketing efforts. And that really pushed me towards this idea of we need to think and act more like media brands, because that's what they do so well, is they know their audience, they own their audience, and they build relationships over time with them, which is what we should be doing as B2B brands.
We're going to dive a whole lot more into this. Before we get there, let's learn a little bit more about Tyler, the person. So Tyler, you grew up in the Toronto area. You deal with a lot of Americans in the process. So either congratulations or apologies, depending on how that one goes for you. Yeah. It is a little bit different doing all of this stuff from north of the border. So, and I mean that down to like, there are certain things that are in American society that are not in Canadian society. Like even for example, I remember a couple of years ago, we were doing some SalesFeed content around the Super Bowl, and the big commercial was the Coinbase QR code commercial. And you were like, we didn't even get that up here in Canada. So my question is, how do you find you're able to stay current, given that so much of the audience you need to be in front of every day is actually south of the border for you?
Yeah, I mean, good news. I didn't come and pitch you on doing a Grey Cup commercial instead of a Super Bowl commercial. For those not in the know, that's our Canadian Football League version of the Super Bowl. And you did not know that because you don't give a shit about Canadian culture, and that's perfectly fine. But on the flip side, us as Canadians, I mean, we are just so exposed to US culture. It really is just a part of how we operate here. So I don't find anything to be too surprising, to be honest. But the majority of who I sell to, who we market to, who I engage with online, are in US or international. And actually, one of the things that I've found to be like really impactful on my career is being really active on LinkedIn as a platform, as a business professional, because that is a great equalizer, right? On LinkedIn, the people I follow, the people who follow me, the people I built relationships with and have conversation are truly all over the world. There are some folks, of course, in Canada, but it knows no bounds. And I find people like yourself, Raj, who happen to be in Chicago. I have lots of folks that I engage with in the UK and Australia and other parts of the world. And seeing their content, seeing the way that they speak, and sort of like in my passive feeds actually really helps with that. And I've learned a lot of slang words in other regions that I wouldn't have otherwise known as well, which is always fun.
Well, let's double down on the slang and everything like that in the American culture. You are a big fan of hip hop, but not necessarily just the artists that, artists like Drake, many artists out of America. Favorite rapper or group of all time, and why?
Oh, most of you won't know this, but my favorite rapper and artist of all time is an incredible lyrical artist named Aesop Rock, not ASAP Rocky.
Right.
Aesop
very
Rock.
Similar.
Very similar in name, very dissimilar in style and approach. Aesop Rock to me is an incredible lyricist who explores different topics in very deep and different ways. And one of the things I love about his music is I can listen to the same album, and I have listened to the same album 100+ times. And every time you listen, you find something new in his lyrics that you didn't catch before, or a different interpretation of what it really is. And that level of depth in terms of like things that he explores is really, really interesting to me. And I'm sure by the end of this, we'll find ways of how I apply his lyrics to my life as a B2B marketer. Let's go there. Get there.
So Aesop is AE, right? Or is it AS?
AESOP. Yeah. Rock. Yeah.
AE. I'm just looking in my iTunes real quick. It never carried. Like when at one point iTunes went in the cloud and like it just it killed like half of the songs you had that you had like uploaded yourself. So I have one. I don't have it now, but I still have the CD probably in my bedroom at my parents' house of Aesop Rock that I got in high school. I don't remember the name of the album, but it was like a cartoon drawing on the front.
Could have been Labor Days was one of his early great ones. Had a very artistic drawing to it. There was None Shall Pass.
I think it was None Shall Pass,
Yeah.
which that song in particular I do really like. But
Yeah.
I will say this. In high school, I tried to get into Aesop Rock because if you were like a real hip hop fan, quote unquote, you should know who Aesop Rock is. And I gave it a shot and I was like, it's just not for me. And I think and maybe it was just that one album, but it was like too out there, like the style itself, like a lot of times it's like not even rapping on beat. And so I just couldn't get down with it. And I had to like act like I really liked Aesop Rock for like 4 years to carry on the image of being a hip hop head. And then I got old enough to be like, I feel comfortable enough in myself and my tastes to just be like, no, I'm not into that music and it's okay for me.
One of the things to be very genuine and like connecting this back to my life as a marketer, what I think all of us should think about as marketers is I find, again, once you really kind of get inside his head and appreciate him as an individual, he is an incredible storyteller. And again, we can say that of many musicians, of course, are great storytellers. But, to me, he like really rises above others. And some of the stories he tells are very like poetic, very metaphoric. You have to like really kind of like figure out where is he really going with this. But sometimes when he goes into direct storytelling mode, he is like unmatched in my opinion. And, he hooks me in both in his ability to like tell a story in an interesting way, but also in the way that he actually delivers it. His voice, his intonation, he never gets boring to me. And he's intentional about that, right? Like he really draws you in. He's very engaging when you listen to him. And I find that, and again, with a lot of other rappers, I find like, yeah, that guy's great, but I'm just like, I kind of get bored of it. I'm like, it's the same rhythm. It's the same staccato. It's just like, I'm like, cool lyrics, but I've heard this 20 times over. And with him, every song, every album, and when he really gets into storytelling mode, he just draws me right in. And I'm like, I got to listen to that again and again. And again, to tie it back to like my world, I'm like, that's the best marketing right there is like when you can tell people stories and engage them in ways where they're like, I got to watch that again, or like, I got to listen to that again to like figure out what I missed. Or I can't wait for the next one because it just like drew something out in me. I mean, that's really the magic of any great musician that you love, is to create that sort of like gravity effect where you really can't wait to see what's next. And again, I think that's what great media companies do as well when they build fan bases like a musician does.
Right. And I agree. I think that's a great model to look at. Is I've long said, don't think like a entrepreneur or an executive, think like an entertainer. I think there's a lot of value in that and how they approach audience development, content creation, quote unquote, et cetera. So let's kind of, walk into today's conversation around the idea of a media brand, which again, you've built up SalesFeed over the last few years. It started as part of Vidyard. Now, for everyone who is not aware, Vidyard is a video selling software. It works as a Chrome extension or a browser extension. You can record video of yourself and populate it into an email or a DM or wherever, any kind of communication-based window. Great for prospecting, great for follow-up emails. I use it in literally every proposal email I send out. Part of that email is a pre-recorded video that I've created showing some client examples. And that's something that just is easy to throw in there because it's hosted on a browser. It's not like having to like upload a QuickTime video off my desktop or anything like that. So what makes, you go back to your time at Vidyard at this point, probably 4 years ago, I want to say, I think SalesFeed launched in 2021, I believe, but you probably had the conversation maybe a little bit before then.
Yeah.
We take it back to then. What's happening in this like boardroom meeting, and who has the idea to say we should build a media brand?
Well, thankfully, it didn't start with we should build a media brand. That came as the like, how do we deliver on this concept or this outcome that we're looking for? And, really where it started was we were looking for ways to expand our reach within our target audience base, which at that time we were building up, again, an audience of salespeople who we wanted to make sure that would eventually become aware of our free products that they could start using and trialing and, learn to love. And we were in a space where we were also doing category building because the idea at that time of like video selling or video prospecting, nobody really knew about it. And so there wasn't a lot of inbound for it. Nobody was going into Google saying, how do I send a video as a salesperson, right? So we had to do a lot of like education of the market. So we felt like anybody who did care about video and sales, they were already coming to us. We wanted to reach all these other people who were sales reps who weren't yet using video for sales or had no idea it even existed, so that we could have the opportunity to influence them over time, expose them to the idea of video selling and turn them into customers. And we knew like there are traditional ways to do that. We can do paid media to get in front of them and get our message in front of them. We can, do other programs, which of course we were doing at some scale. But we wanted to find really like a smart, long-term, organic way to build that audience. And we knew that if we just talked about using video in sales, we would have a very narrow scope and most people wouldn't pay attention to us. So we decided to really invest in a much broader content and social media strategy to create an audience of sales reps who, again, weren't yet ready to buy what we were selling, but we wanted to build a relationship with over time. And to do that, we knew, number one, we had to talk about things that they cared more about than just video, which really drew me to we need to be audience first. We need to know what makes these salespeople tick. What do they really care about in the moment? And how do we now build engagement and an audience with them? So number one, we knew we wanted to talk about broader things than just what we do. And number two, we knew we need to do it in a way that was interesting to them, that really leaned into their preferences, the way they wanted to engage with content these days. And when we asked a lot of sales reps, like all of you should do as a business, you go out and you ask your audience all sorts of questions to better understand them. And we didn't just ask them like, what's your age, like this and that, like the basic sort of firmographic and demographics. We asked them things like, who's your favorite follow on social media? What's your favorite podcast? How do you prefer to receive information when you're learning about a certain topic? Do you frequent any YouTube channels? What blogs do you go to? Again, what media sites do you learn from? And we really tried to understand those different patterns. And for our audience, we found that they didn't read long form blogs or articles or ebooks. They preferred short form social content, short form video, and podcasts. Just happened to be the nature of that audience. And they preferred newsletters and things that would find them rather than having to go out and hunt it down. And so as we learned these things, we said, okay, we want to build an audience of these people. This is what they really care about, how they like to engage. We need to meet them where they are. And so we decided to start to build down a content and engagement strategy like a media brand, where we said, what does our audience care about? Where are they? How do we reach them in a modern way and do it consistently on a daily basis so we stay top of mind? And that was really the genesis of saying, hey, what we're talking about is a media brand, is a media company. That's how they operate. And so we decided to go down that path, and we called it SalesFeed as opposed to just an extension to our core Vidyard content, because we wanted our audience to know we were all about them, right? Like sales right in the title. This is for you. This isn't about us. And that's why we really carved down a separate brand name for it as well.
So you didn't call it Vidyard Plus.
We thought about it for 12 seconds. And no disrespect to folks like Salesforce who have Salesforce Plus, and a few others have done that motion. But no, we didn't. And you know what? It's actually an interesting point, Raj, not just from like a Me Too branding perspective, but we also made an intentional decision, which a lot of people miss when they think, oh, we should be a media brand, was that this wasn't just going to be like a bunch of video series. And that's what like some people think when they're like, I'm going to be a media brand, I'm going to be like Netflix or Disney or Salesforce Plus. They think that equals video series. And that's what a media brand is. And in reality, there are tons of amazing media brands that aren't video, that are other forms, that are multi-format. And we need to make sure we weren't falling into that trap of like, we're going to be Vidyard Plus and we're going to do a bunch of video series for you. Because we didn't know if that's exactly what our audience wanted. And we found out they wanted some of that, but they wanted other things too.
Right. Yeah. And I think what's interesting is I remember when we first talked about it, right? Like I actually remember physically I was in Phoenix at the time visiting my brother and his family. So I remember the exact like conversation we were having at the time. And the brand was like soon to be launched. We were kicking around a couple ideas around like a podcast series or a video series being one of the things. Yep. And at the time, I remember one of the questions that I asked you was, if we do this kind of content, is it going to be beholden to a sales quota? Like it's only successful if it generates X number of leads for Vidyard. And you had told me then, actually, no, like we have the blessing to build content, not to have a quota attached to it, at least out of the gate, maybe for the first year or so. So can you, I think one of the things that's really challenging here is when you want to do creative stuff as a brand, the creativity gets dimmed by the immediate question of, is it going to, like, what's the ROI on it? Is it going to drive leads? Is it going to drive sales? Why are we doing it if not? So what's the argument for, well, no, and that's okay, and let's let this breathe for a while?
Yeah, I mean, it's the classic brand versus demand conversation that every company has, and it's particularly challenging for smaller companies and startups because you have such limited resources, where you really want to focus as much effort as you can on the demand side of the business and on capturing, what I think about as the in-market demand today, right? Like people who are actively searching for what you do, who are looking for a product in that area. That's the low-hanging fruit. And of course, we need to focus a good chunk of our business there because those are the people who are going to convert the fastest and be the most efficient for us. But at the end of the day, again, this is much more akin to like how we build a brand in a market. We have to be thinking about, where do we go from here and in the future? How do we create a more efficient inbound mechanism, a more efficient demand engine 6 to 12 to 24 months down the line, and create a moat or a competitive advantage against others in our space by creating broader relationships, broader brand awareness than they're able to do, and put them in catch-up mode. And again, when we thought about it at first, and I told you that, and you're absolutely right, I remember, and I told you and a couple of others very clearly, no, we do not have like a lead target behind this or a sales target behind this. The reality is, sorry, Raj, I did have a spreadsheet somewhere on my drive that showed my expectation with respect to how we can grow the audience first and how over time we could expose them to what we do as a business once we earn their trust. And, it's sort of a, hand wavy model of like, I think we could convert X% of those people into actual users over time. Now, what we didn't know is like, how long might that take? Or what would those percentages be? But we all understood the value of building a highly engaged audience, creating that trust with them around the messages, the content that we're putting out there, the brand experience we're creating through this content. And that over time, we would figure out how to expose them to what we do, what we offer, and create those conversion opportunities. And that actually ended up being, I think, my favorite and most interesting part of building a media brand was figuring out those conversion hooks over time and creating a model where we were very clearly able to show this is how we're going to take these audience members. I called it turning followers into fans and then fans into customers. And we had very intentional motions that we built to do that and say, how do we take these people who start following us and turn them into raving fans? And how do we turn those fans into customers when they are ready and showing interest in what it is that we do, which could be 3 months from now, could be 6 months from now, could be 2 years from now. But if we can keep their attention until they're ready, we're going to win in the long term.
So there was a quota, but it was the first quota was audience growth before, and it was not like
absolutely
with each 200 people you add, there must be 3 leads generated. It was like get to a certain point, then we shift some of our focus into how does this now trickle down funnel.
Yeah, it's very similar to kind of building an initial social media strategy and in some ways a content strategy. So it's, number one is build the audience. Number two is ensure we're creating a high degree of consistent engagement and repeat engagement from those audiences, because that's what's going to lead to long-term opportunity to drive conversion, right? It's, again, one of the things that I I really hate about most brand programs and how this is different from traditional brand building is that traditional brand building tends to be fleeting moments of brand impressions as opposed to ongoing moments of brand engagement. And the fleeting moments of brand impression are when we do things like here's an ad here or a billboard here, or we show up at a conference and they see our name. Reality is recall for that stuff, especially in B2B, is very poor. And if they don't convert immediately, like what do we usually do for a brand program? If somebody like responds to it, we immediately try to sell them. And we're like, hey, are you ready to buy? And they're like, not quite ready. And we're like, okay, we're going to put you in a nurture stream for 30 days and hopefully you'll be ready then. And it's like, they're not going to be ready in 30 days if they're not ready today. Like, give me a break. And so that's where we sort of take these moments of brand impression, and most of them we squander away, with the exception of the like 1% who happened to be in market when they saw our brand. The idea of consistent ongoing brand engagement is where we create this sort of halo effect. We say, we're going to keep ourselves top of mind. We're going to keep our brand present in your inbox, in your social feed. And you're going to keep coming back to us because the stuff we're offering you is so great. And we are going to maintain and be top of mind and earn that trust and actually have real affinity for our brand as opposed to just those impressions.
It's kind of like in that, you talk about the brand versus demand conversation. We tend to think of demand in the funnel, right? Top, mid, bottom funnel.
Yeah.
But it feels like what you're saying is in building a media brand, it's like there's pre-funnel work before you even think about it. Or maybe it's like you have your funnel, but there's pre-funnel or what's around the funnel even in the first place before you get to the funnel.
Yeah, we actually started thinking about that in many ways, that it was almost like this, our exclusively owned super top of funnel, right? Because usually when we think about our funnels as marketers or businesses, we think top of funnel are the people who are coming in, who are starting to show some potential interest, right? They are people who are searching for, again, if you sell a CRM software, your top of funnel is usually going to be people who are starting to search for CRM related topics. They're coming to your blog, they're reading about certain things. Maybe they're attending a webinar about CRM over here, and they become your top of funnel who you need to now start moving down. Well, the reality is there are, that's still only probably less than 5% of your total addressable market are those people who are going to get into your top of funnel because they're showing some level of interest, right? 95% of people that you're trying to target don't care about CRM right now. They don't care about it tomorrow because they have a good solution in place today. So they're never going to get into the top of your funnel, but they're out there, right? And once they do have a need, are they going to get into your funnel or somebody else's? Well, if you create this sort of super top of funnel where you're engaging them on other topics they do care about today, right? Then maybe 3 to 6 months down the road, when they do have a need, they'll come into your top of funnel, and they won't even go into your competitors because they already know you. They already trust you because of other things you're talking about, that they go, hey, wait, these guys actually do CRM? Oh, interesting. I'm going to check this out because I already love all the other things I'm getting from them. And that podcast they have about like how to manage sales objections, that's my favorite podcast. I'm just going to hop on in and see what they have to offer.
Now, as you get someone into the funnel and ultimately ready to buy, you have to make sure there's a good product behind that ultimately. And so for everyone who's listening right now, whether you are at the point of building a media brand or you're just in the early stages of getting your first few customers, that product's got to live up to whatever the promise is at the bottom, mid, top funnel. And if you want that product to live up to the promise and you don't personally have software development skills, you want to find the right partner, and you want to go to the GOAT of software development. The GOAT of software development is Akeva. And the reality is I have seen a lot of startups not be able to deliver on that product promise at the end of the day because they go offshore with their development or they go to a budget dev shop and they end up getting screwed over because those providers, you know what they are? They're order takers, and they do the bare minimum, which often means your software ends up having gaping holes in it, or you actually end up getting forced to pay hidden release fees to claim ownership of your code. On the other side of the spectrum is Akeva. They build strategically for scale from day one. They help you make product decisions along the way. And they also give you full ownership of your code by default. They don't want to hold on to it. You own the code that's written in the contract from day one. And with Speaking of code, they have a killer offer for you. It's called a You Call It code review. What's a You Call It code review? Well, go to Akeva, and if you qualify, they will review the most critical parts of your code so you can see exactly what your technology needs to either launch or scale. And they will do this completely free, and then you call it from there. So if you want to handle things on your own, you call it. If you want Akeva's development help, you call it. If you want to take Akeva's consultation and then take it somewhere else to get developed, you
call it.
There you go. It's like being back in college at the bar. Wednesday nights, it was like dollar, you call it, well drinks. But think about, instead of getting well drinks, you're getting top shelf here, and you're not even paying $1. You're getting it for free, and it's about your product at the end of the day. So tomorrow is going to be better. You're not going to wake up with a headache tomorrow like you would at the bar in college. So if you're ready to see if you qualify for a You Call It code review, if you're ready to get goated, head to akeva.io. That's akava.io, akeva.io. Fill out the form there. Tell them Startup Hype Man sent you. Today on Startup Hype Man's Goat to Market show, we're with Tyler Lessard, the founder of SalesFeed Media, the chief marketing officer of Technology Advice, and also the founder of Outside In Marketing Consultancy. As we talk about, Tyler, this idea of like the pre-funnel versus the funnel, audience development requires, I think, maybe in today's market where there's so many options, not just within, let's say, like marketing itself, right? Like take content marketing. There's so many options a person could go to. But the thing is, you're not just competing against what is content that other companies are creating.
Right.
I feel like you're also competing against what do people just go to just for pure entertainment.
Yeah.
Right. Like when you start to put things on YouTube, it might be that you're competing against another brand's video on how to sell better. But on top of that, I think you're also competing against the fact that there is a 2-minute clip from The Simpsons of Homer doing this thing that's very easily clickable, which honestly, every time I go to YouTube, I see one of them. I'm like, it's 14 seconds. Let me just watch that real quick. So you've got to really be intentional about the content you create. And SalesFeed, I think, has built a really recognized name for creating quite out there content, but it still works. And some of the things we did together back in the day, we launched probably, I would say, the best parody music videos that have ever been created that are about, the sales selling world. We had a podcast we did together. We had a YouTube video series we did together. Can you talk through the ideation of where, and you said earlier,
Yep.
It doesn't have to just be a video series, right? But can you talk through at least the ideation of okay, media brand, we have the entire sort of world of creativity at our fingertips. Where do we start? How do you even just get started with creating the content?
Yeah. I mean, to your point, we're competing for attention. We're trying to maximize engagement of our audiences. And these are things that traditional B2B marketers actually don't do very well, right? It tends to be, again, very conversion centric things they're doing. So it is a different skill set and a different mindset to be thinking about how are we going to create, this audience of followers and fans who are going to choose our content over somebody else's. And when you think about it through that lens, there's a lot more dimensions that you have to be mindful of when planning and creating your content. It's not just about writing the best possible blog post or ebook, right? Now we're thinking about, okay, what is the content? How is it delivered? What format is it delivered in? How entertaining versus educational is it going to be? If it's going to be in video or audio, who's going to be on camera or who's going to be on the mic? Who is the talent that is now going to be a part of this? And that's actually something that a lot of companies, especially in B2B and startups and others, haven't cracked the code on, right? Traditionally, we had an internal facing marketing team. We had a content writer. Nobody had to be out there on camera. Nobody had to be out there on the mic. And we weren't building up personalities. We weren't building up, again, talent that was engaging our audience in that way. And we found a really great opportunity there with SalesFeed My first hire was an individual who, I felt could really relate to the sales audience. He's somebody who was a salesperson himself. So I knew he could relate very well to the audience we were trying to build. He didn't come from Vidyard or video. He came from pure sales, which is what I was looking for. But he also had already proven himself as a TikTok creator and a LinkedIn creator. And I knew he had the great ability to be amazing on camera and to also be his own full stack creator, where he could come up with an idea, film it, edit it, ship it, and sort of be a one-stop shop to make sure we could do it in an agile way. And that was all those things were really, really important. Because again, you're not going to create this like consistent cycle of engagement and brand building with audiences with those traditional tactics of like writing static content or not trying to be a little bit funny now and again or a little bit more engaging. So we have to think about those different skill sets and how we bring them into today's marketing world. And there's lots of different ways that you can do it. And it depends on kind of what you want to be known for, what you think your audience needs. But we need to be intentional about that, especially who's going to be that talent if we're going to do video and audio to ensure we're creating stuff that our audience is going to crave.
So I think there's a key sort of lesson here, and that is particularly because I think just so many people are locked into like the business mindset is they really think it has to be like someone at the company doing the thing, the creating,
right?
Or it has to be, the CEO themselves. But if the CEO is not naturally a quote unquote personality or is not an entertainer by default, you'll end up getting like white paper style content, right? Whatever the format is, it could be a podcast, it could be a video, it could be a newsletter, but you'll get like what feels like that version of a white paper that's very kind of dull and dry. And so I think that ability to reach out to other sort of, I think the word would be creators, if we use the modern terms, reach out to other creators to pull them in really helps a lot. Obviously I was one of those people. And I also think what helps is like you said, I was not an employee of Vidyard. Will Aitken prior to that was not an employee of Vidyard. Some of the other talent you pulled in were not employees of Vidyard. So anything that we would be saying would have an added layer of authenticity to it.
Right.
And there was also never really to my recollection, there was never a directive of like, hey, let's make sure we talk about Vidyard in this segment or in this thing. And I'm sure you had in your own background, like, I'm gonna pop it in here or there, but the direction to any given talent you brought in was not do this thing and make sure you say Vidyard's name 5 times in it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, the focus there is on like, we need to create high resonance with the audience. We need to put people in front of them that are going to be engaging, educational, entertaining, and that they're going to trust, right? Like, again, they're not going to come back if they feel like this person, doesn't get them or whatever it happens to be. So, all those things have to go into it. And I think to your point of you can't always rely or expect that like the CEO is going to be the main person in our content. They probably have a place to play and a role to play, right? It's not that they shouldn't be, but if you, think about how am I going to best create a relatable experience for my audience that they're going to want to keep coming back, it often does come back to ensuring you have somebody and people who are acting as those peers to them, who they can trust and know. So if you're trying to build an audience of accounting professionals, right? What you don't want to do is put a marketer who could just say some accounting acronyms on camera at a pitch stuff, right? You want to find somebody who comes from the world of accounting. And it might be, it might have to do a little bit of digging, but there's probably some folks who are great creators, who are some influencers. Maybe they're doing some stuff on TikTok. Maybe they're doing things on other platforms who are, very capable, who are very trustworthy and knowledgeable in the world of accounting. They have subject matter expertise there. They come across incredibly authentic and genuine because that's their world, but they're also great on camera, super engaging. They love creating content. They want to be out there every day, building an audience and helping you do that. That's the sweet spot for me when you can find that. And it could be somebody you hire in and is an internal employee, and or to your point, you can partner with folks in the industry to be that voice with you, either as a freelancer or a part-time employee, as somebody who either hosts a series for you or is sort of a consistent face across different things that you do. Lots of different ways you can activate it. But I think this is going to be more and more important for any business as we go forward. If they really do want to create an audience of people who are going to, over time, kind of want that relationship and also become advocates for them.
The other thing that I think was, you and your team were particularly prudent about, or just maybe, I don't know if it's prudent or relaxed about, maybe, is being able to objectively look at if something is working or not, and then deciding, do we continue to do that? The example I'll point to is, for about a year, you and I co-hosted the Full Funnel YouTube series. It was like a 10-minute YouTube show called Full Funnel. We would cover 3 topics, I believe, over the course of the show. It was kind of creatively divided out as like top funnel, mid funnel, bottom funnel. And we tried to do it like the way ESPN does Pardon the Interruption, or those standard like sports debate style shows that have happened over the last 20 years or so. And then you were kind of like looking at the numbers and you were like, we're not getting like the views or the engagement on it that works. And then you came back to me with like, well, what if we did this instead? And that's where we came out with I think it was the SalesFeed show, right? The podcast.
Yep.
We retooled everything. We turned it into a podcast with a video component to it that was in-depth interviews about a specific topic. It was very, very well produced and edited. It had fun like game show segments in it. Can you talk about sort of that? Like, how are you looking at something to say, keep doing this?
Yeah.
Or let's give it a little bit more time, or no, cut it now. Like, we got to move on to something else.
Yeah. I mean, there's always leading indicators for, any of the different things you're doing, especially things that are sort of like repeat segments or series based, because that gives you a sort of a longer period to look at overall, is it working when we're doing it consistently in this way? And, there's obvious things in terms of like, are we seeing, the reach? Are people actually like consuming it? What kind of engagement? We were obsessed about our engagement metrics. So, whether or not somebody clicked play, were they staying tuned, partway through? So we'd always look at those as leading indicators for the content success. And to your point, we had to be really diligent about our resources and say, we have a very small team. There's only so many things we can do. We got to make sure we're always doing our best and most impactful work. But at the end of the day, it was around, is the audience digging it? Like, it wasn't like, did we like it or whatnot? It was like, is the audience giving us the signals that they love it, they're waiting for the next one or not? And if we weren't picking up those positive signals, we said, well, we have to like place some bets on why we believe that's the case and adjust accordingly. And I think that example that you shared, we decided that we felt like most folks in our space just didn't want to spend the time to watch longer form video, because it's a very active process where they had to take like 10, 15 minutes out of their day to sit and watch. But we did know that they would be willing to spend 30 minutes listening to a podcast, which was like at first a bit of a like, well, wait a minute, like 30 minutes over 10 minutes, like what gives? But the idea that a podcast is a passive listening experience, that they can do other things while they're listening. They could be working out, they could be updating Salesforce, whatever it is.
Probably what people are doing right now while listening to this.
Oh, yeah. Oh, by the way, you missed that field on the campaign source as you're updating Salesforce there. Anyway, but yeah, you have to be really smart about that, of what's working, what's not. The other thing we did, Raj, a core part of our media brand was, we were publishing a lot on YouTube, on social media channels, and trying to get into people's feeds. But we also wanted a way to get them to subscribe and say, how can I get these to my inbox? Because that also would give us another mechanism to test what was working, like what was actually getting click-throughs in the newsletter. So if we took a full funnel episode and then put it into a newsletter, push that out, were people clicking in to watch it, right? Was it just they couldn't find it on YouTube? So a newsletter actually became a core part of our media strategy. And it became that way where we said, hey, we're doing great stuff on TikTok, YouTube, on LinkedIn. We're releasing guides and reports. We're going to give you a weekly newsletter that brings it all to your inbox once a week. So you don't have to go and find it elsewhere. It comes and finds you. And we're going to highlight the best stuff or the things that we're trying to test, right? Like, does this work or not? So it became a really important part of the media brand to not only like create ongoing engagement and subscriptions, but to allow us to like test putting things out there to people and seeing what the click-through rate was when it was delivered in that format. When we knew it got there, they opened it, but did they choose to click? So it gave us another avenue to test content. And I think that's always really important.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's where I was going to go next with this is you have a YouTube channel, you have a podcast, you have LinkedIn posts. You don't own any of those audiences. right? YouTube does, Apple Podcast / Spotify owns it, LinkedIn owns those audiences. You don't really, know who's watching or who's listening.
Right.
And you need to have a place to be able to directly get in front of the audience. You need to be able to quote unquote own your audience. And that's really, I think, the power of the newsletter. In addition to, it combines everything in one place. It's like, hey, and the way SalesFeed has done its newsletters, it's like, here's what we released in the last week. There's this new podcast episode. We released this 5-minute video on video selling. We released this masterclass on here, or here's our meme of the week, things like that, right? So I think the existence of the newsletter really helps create a hub. If you think of the hub and spoke model, it's like each of these individual assets are the spokes, but the newsletter ends up being the hub for a business that's launching and building up a media platform. In my case, I use ActiveCampaign for newsletters. Great platform for that, not just for newsletter creation, but then even for a lot of the marketing automation you want to do on the back end. I know a lot of people listening to this, you've either not gotten into newsletter development yet, or you're just kind of toying around with it. So remember, you've got, ActiveCampaign is who has my vote, and they're a partner of this show. So if you want to get a free 2-week trial, just head to the link in the bio. Yeah, all right. Head to the link in the episode description. Head to the link in the episode description. You'll see that you can get a free 2-week ActiveCampaign trial. Great platform for getting started with your newsletter and then building on your automation from there. With the way, I got one more question here, and then we'll go into our final wrap up.
Great.
With everything that you've been able to build up through SalesFeed over the years, right? We talked about 150,000 followers and subscribers at this point. Naturally, the genesis of SalesFeed, there was, I would say, a significant amount of budget that was able to be thrown behind it to get in talent, to get some full-time employees under SalesFeed, to have the editors and all that stuff, to get the flywheel going.
Yep.
If you're budget light or maybe budget non-existent,
yep,
is this achievable, or is any version of it achievable? And if so, what would you recommend as the getting started point?
Yeah, it absolutely is achievable in some ways, and you can take baby steps to this. I think the most important thing, the foundation to me of any great kind of media content strategy, whether that's just like an evolution of your content strategy, your social strategy, or actually launching a separate media brand, the foundation of it is why I called my consulting business Outside In. It's about having this like audience first view on what it is you're publishing out to your community. So I want you to be as empathetic as you can to the audience you're trying to serve. I want you to understand, who are these folks, not just the typical ideal customer profile and persona work, but understand, who do they follow and why? What kind of content do they tend to engage with? What do they love to see hit their inbox? What formats do they tend to prefer, sort of generally speaking? And use that to inform your own content, community building, and social media strategies. Don't just say, oh, we're going to do LinkedIn because that's what these people do, or we're going to do a podcast because that's what everybody else does. Be hyper empathetic to your audience, make very precise decisions based on what they care about and what they show interest in, and start there. And it could very much start as we're just going to lean into a killer TikTok channel for this community because we think there's an opportunity there. And that's how our media strategy starts. And once we get our rhythm there, we're going to cross over here. We're going to add something here, but you can always start small and grow, but focus on that mindset, that outside in, audience first mindset. And you'll start to build a community quickly if you commit to that.
Let's hit our wrap up now. First off, Tyler, where can our listeners find you? Where can they learn more? Where can they find these platforms?
Well, hit me up on LinkedIn, Tyler Lessard. You'll find me there. You can also head to salesfeedmedia.com if you want to check out our different media sites, our YouTube channel, and others. It's a great set of inspiration for you. So even if you're not in sales, feel free to check those out, and maybe they'll give you some ideas about your own content and media strategy.
I was a little disappointed when you launched your consultancy Outside In. You did not choose to name it Less is More.
Raj, I'm not upset about that at all. And thankful I did not call it Less is More. But you're not wrong.
We will now give our final takeaways for the listeners based on the conversation today. I'll go first and I'll toss it to you. The topic today was building a successful media brand. I have a whole page of notes here. What I want to bring it back to is one of the first notes that I wrote, which is, as it pertains to getting started with a media brand, ask your audience where they are already getting their information from.
Yep.
Tyler, top 1 or 2 lessons or takeaways?
Yep. +1 on that. Really understand your audience. Be thoughtful about who is going to be the face of your content. If you are going to invest in video and or multimedia, that personality becomes really, really important. And you want to ensure you have somebody representing your brand and your content who is going to be relatable to your audience, who's going to be trustworthy, who's going to be engaging, and they're going to want to come back and learn more and follow along with. So that's a really, really important one.
We will now close with our final question. Actually, no, I jumped the gun there. Who is one person you want to shout out who's been helpful on your journey?
Well, I will give a shout out to, I think I'm going to have to give it to my boy, Will Aitken. Will was my first hire on SalesFeed as that face of the brand, a kind of full stack creator. He not only was a huge part of the success of building up SalesFeed, but he taught me a tremendous amount about the future of content, about how to create in a different mindset, how to really relate to an audience, and how to be entertaining in B2B in ways that don't offend everybody, but probably still offend some people. So big shout out to my boy, Will. You've taught me a ton. You've been an amazing partner, and love you, bud.
Tyler, because of that, Tyler is living proof you can be in your 40s and understand TikTok. I'm in my 30s and I don't understand it. So my final question, which is how we end every episode of this show, fill in the blank, Tyler. Entrepreneurship is blank.
Entrepreneurship is stimulating. And that could be in lots of different ways, Raj. Lots of different ways.
Entrepreneurship is stimulating. I do not think we've ever had that answer, and asking it probably over 100 times at this point.
I was trying to not give the obvious ones, but like in all sincerity, like I've been around lots of entrepreneurs. I've been in small businesses, and we all know it's a roller coaster, but it's never dull. It's always got us going, and hopefully it's stimulating in the right ways, that it's exciting. It's like, it just sparks passion. That is the best part of it. But at times, of course, it can be negatively stimulating as well. And you got to ride those waves.
I love it. Entrepreneurship is stimulating. He is Tyler Lessard. And for anyone who has been listening to this, if you've been having any follow-up questions on your mind and you're like, ooh, he said this, that's interesting, I really want to ask about this. Good news. Well, actually, I forgot to tell you about this beforehand, Tyler, but I'm signing you up for it now, actually.
Uh-oh.
Tyler is going to be hopping into GTM Club. That's our online community of founders and GTM leaders doing a follow-up Ask Me Anything to this show. The first week this episode goes live, it'll be like a Reddit style forum where he'll post. You can just send a reply comment there asking any follow-up question you have to Tyler, and he'll drop you a response within that same week. So if you were listening to this and you were like, I want to dig into a little bit more about how they were able to launch a lot of YouTube videos in a short amount of time, you can ask Tyler that. If you want to follow up with Tyler and ask him a question about how do you source the right creators for building a media brand, you can ask him that. If you want to follow up and ask for his favorite Aesop Rock song, you can ask him that. That's the point of an Ask Me Anything, and you'll be able to ask Tyler anything the whole first week this episode goes live, happening inside of Goat to Market Club. To access that, all you got to do is become a member. Membership is completely free at startuphypeman.com/GTM-club. Tyler, once again, thank you for joining today on the Goat to Market Show.
Thank you.
That'll put a bow on this one. Before we head out of here, a couple quick housekeeping items. Number one, did you like what you heard? Well, give us a subscribe and a follow. Maybe share it with one friend who you think would find this valuable. Number two, Remember that Ask Me Anything I told you about at the end of the episode? That goes down exclusively inside of Goat to Market Club, our online founder and startup community, and you can access it for free. Your membership is 100% free at startuphypeman.com/GTM-club. Number 3, need pitch help? Startup Hype Man is your man. Whether it's a fundraising narrative or a go-to-market or category narrative, we've got you covered to make sure you have messaging that doesn't help you just go to market, but of course what? Helps you become the GOAT to market. All right, we will see you next week here on the GOAT to Market Show. Thank you for listening. And remember, why be a unicorn when you can be the GOAT?